Hi, marketers. This is Dots, and welcome to the Marketing Leadership Podcast. With me here is Juleyka Lantigua, CEO or founder at LWC Studios. We will discuss audio journalism for marketers in a digital world. I know you guys are ready, so let's do this. Juleyka, welcome. How are you doing?
Hi, Docs. Thank you for having me. I'm well. I'm really well.
Yeah, really an honor to have you and to discuss this topic as well. I don't think we've discussed something like this. Um, so it's going to be exciting for everyone listening. Audio is starting to become the future. It was first text, then video. Now it's the turn of audio to gain its own 15 minutes of fame, if I will put that. But before we get into the topic, let's talk about you. Do you want to tell us about yourself, your background, and your role?
Sure, I'm happy to. I have been in media for 25 years. I started out in print, in magazines and books, and then I made my way over to digital. And then about 6.5 years ago, I founded LWC Studios because I fell in love with podcasting and I thought it was a new language for me as a storyteller. So I loved every single minute of it.
Mhm. Wow. That's really, really great. And um, when you're looking at, again, you've been there, done that, and it's always nice to ask people like you about projection. So what are some of the trends when it comes to how the creator economy is evolving, and how that the audio side of the creator economy is evolving? For example, in podcasting now, even though there are just 5 million podcasts out there, it seems like there's too many podcasts to choose from, and that was just a couple of years ago. So what are some of those trends in general? And you don't have to focus on podcasts. I would like to look at the audio space in
Yeah.
general.
So first, I'm going to completely disagree. I don't think that there are too many podcasts. I mean, are there too many YouTube videos? Are there too many TikToks? So I really dislike when people say that because there aren't too many of anything at this point.
Mm,
A couple of trends that I love in digital audio right now is that niche podcasts are really taking over. So people who are really artisanal, creative, and forward thinking are amassing small but extremely loyal audiences that they're also learning to monetize in many different ways. And so I love that because you don't have to have 100,000 downloads a month to really sustain a show, especially when it's a show that reflects back part of who they are to your audience. So that's the other thing that I really love about podcasting, that it is about giving people a place to go where part of their identity can be shared. And I
mm,
think that more passive mediums like streaming and film don't allow people to do that, right? So people who are big Marvel fans, they go to Comic-Con to find that community. And
yes.
so not everybody can go to Comic-Con. But with podcasting, you can be wherever you are and then participate in a community of like-minded people. Especially if the podcaster, the creators behind the show do a really good job on social media, if they do a really good job on engaging proactively with their listeners.
I like that. I like that. Being niche, just to add to what you said there, being niche is not fun, and I'll say why. Because we live in a world where it's all about the counts.
Mm.
It's all about the 2 million impressions. Or no,
Mhm.
sorry, 2 million is even small. 300 million impressions. The more figures you add to it, the better. Niche content doesn't give you that, but what niche content gives you is absolutely very high, insane amount of conversion rate or engagement,
Mhm.
depending on what you are using that audio to do. Um, you know, it's like they say, it's better to have 500 dedicated audiences than to have 10,000 and only 400 of those are dedicated. Or even if it's more than 500 or 10,000 that is dedicated, it's obvious that the conversion rate of that is not very high. So um, eh, I think that's something that people need to continue to consider. And if you want to sort of spread, you're working on some sort of a global marketing strategy, then you can do market-based content for each market, which I know you've done, maybe creating content in different languages and things like that.
Mhm.
So that also works as well. Okay. Another question that I was thinking about is using audio as part of a PR strategy,
Mm.
right? What does that look like for brands? And I know people could do this for different reasons: brand equity, crisis management, engagement, and so on and so forth. How do you know, tie audio into, a company's public relations?
That's a really great question. And there are two essential ways that we've done that in the past with our clients. One is by telling the brand story. So, who are we? Why are we here? How do we influence the people who are part of our circles? That kind of thing. And so we did that really well with one of our early clients, the Phi Beta Kappa Society, which is the oldest honor society in the country. And so they wanted to reach the younger audiences, the new members that were just coming out of college. And so they needed something, that was portable. They needed something that was accessible in many ways. And so a podcast made a lot of sense. And so we launched a podcast for them, which was about expanding the reach beyond the established alumni and really digging into the new ranks of the graduation of the graduating seniors that were coming into the professional ranks as Phi Beta Kappa members. And so that's one way that we've done it. The other way that we've done it is to amplify the ability of an organization to influence other areas. So, for example, another longstanding client, NACAC,
Mm,
which is the National Association for College Advising,
mm,
um, they didn't have a way to reach parents and students that was, again, something portable, something that was accessible, something that was universally available that didn't need to be scheduled. So launching a podcast for them also made a lot of sense because they reached their membership, about 15 to 20,000 members, and then reach well beyond that with really actionable knowledge about the college admissions process. And so that podcast reached 100,000 listeners really quickly. Because as you can imagine, there are, millions of families who go through the college admissions process every year. And so it became an essential tool for them, for those families and for the advisors. But more importantly, it got the brand out into the hands of people who otherwise would not have come across it because it is a professional organization.
mm, That's great. That's great. And guys, if you're listening, this doesn't just tie to non-profits or associations. Yeah, this is just again an example. It could be any brand. I mean, most corporate looking brands these days are now very social in nature. They are now very purpose driven in the way they build their brand. So, it's not just tied to a specific industry. I think this can work in any industry. And if no one in your industry has tried it, then you can be the first. It's something everybody's trying these days, trying to be the first at everything. So that's really, really great. I want to look a bit technically into the content itself, audio
Okay.
content in general. Um, for example, podcast, for example, it could be other types of content. It's often, consumed very passively. What do I mean by that? You are driving, you're listening. You're cooking, you are listening. You are walking, in my case, because I can't take coffee. So I'm always listening to something for like 18 hours a day. It's always passive. Um, how do you produce a content that goes beyond that and captures people's attention and drives engagement? What are some of the creative ways that you people have made content that was just so engaging? Not necessarily viral. I mean, if it's viral, it's out to be engaging first. I get that, but e- even even if it's just a small size,
Mm.
and it just became very relevant. What are some of those things that our listeners or viewers can learn from?
Really good question. And I have a great example for this, which is one of our early podcasts. It's called 70 Million,
Mhm.
and it is a documentary series exploring criminal justice reform in the United States. And we knew very early when we embarked on that project that it needed to be a tool, right? It could not be passive. It could not just be something that you sat down and listened to. because we intended for the activists, the practitioners, the formerly incarcerated, the policymakers, we intended them to use it. And so what we did was we annotated every transcript. So every source that was mentioned in the actual audio was also linked to. So you didn't have to go and do extra research. You could just click on it, super easy. So as you can imagine, that led to a ton of course adoption. Right now, that show is being used in over 100 university courses around the country. And I think it's because we saved students and professors a lot of work by annotating the transcripts. The other thing that we did was we created these resource guides, which basically were a blueprint for how the organizations did what they did that we featured in the episode. So again, it was a PDF, 5 to 10 pages, and any person around the country who wanted to recreate the success of that organization could download absolutely for free. Because again, we made the podcast open source and license free. And so anyone can use it without permission, without licensing, without paying us. And so what happened was that these resource guides, which are really beautifully designed, super helpful, and had a ton of links, were then utilized to recreate some of the success stories in the show. We also created listening guides. We also included photojournalistic quality pictures so that if people wanted to publish those in their local news, if they wanted to put those on a website. So we gave our listeners, 5 or 6 different ways to engage with the show other than just listening to it passively. And over the last 5 years that we've been making the show, we're now 50 episodes deep. It has been used in congressional testimony. It has been used in court documents. It has been sourced in academic writing. It was named by Columbia Journalism Review as one of the best podcasts that year that we launched it. And so again, because of the utility aspect of what we created, it really enabled people to enter into a relationship with the show from many, many different sides.
Mm, mm. Great, great. I love the way you share examples. It's just awesome because people, when you have guests like this on the podcast and people talk about principles and things like that, when you see someone give an example, then you know that they're actually walking the talk, which is a different topic for another day. Which how influencers did this. I always, I can do this, I can do that, and then when you talk to them, they don't have any example. So thanks for sharing again some great, great knowledge and wisdom in regards to how you can be creative with some of this content, especially on the audio side of things. And it's not easy as well. It's not easy. It's in order to do something well, it takes time. You're not sure if it's going to work or not work and things like that. And we are all doing this in what we call the cold recession, where the economy is not smiling and everybody is, not, they're just like, we've got this budget, so here's what we can do with it and all that. So, just if you're listening or watching, just strategy is very important. I think all the successes Juleyka mentioned will not be possible without some level of strategy. So it's important to find that content to market fit so that you can be able to, figure out how to execute in a way that is efficient. If I'll put it that way, guys, all I'm asking for you to share when it comes to this podcast, we look at interesting topics like this one that people are actually asking for on the web, but no one is providing answers to. So please share. It helps us as well as we continue to do this. You can do everything else as well, but just share first, and then you do the rest later. I have one more question for you, Juleyka, but we need to go on the dots rapid fire. But before then, we need to go on a quick commercial break from our sponsor. And then when we'll be right back, we have saved the best question for the last. So guys, don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Welcome back, guys. So, like I said, it does rapid fire. It's 3 questions. You're in the marketing court of law, Juleyka. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. First question is, what is your favorite marketing metric? And I don't want to hear sales or revenue.
Oh, it's neither one of those. The most important one for us is the listen through rate. So, what percentage of each episode are people consuming on average? Because we want to know, how loyal are you? How much time are you spending with the show?
Yes, yes. It's slowly becoming the key KPI for podcasters, especially um, especially when you want to move away from downloads. Then what's next, basically?
Yep.
Okay,
Down with the
that's good.
download. The download is terrible.
Yeah, exactly. So, um, but yeah, it's good to know. People like me also share stuff around on social media on how people can measure and also optimize for this. So I love it. I love it. As of today, that will also be my favorite KPI. Second one, how long do you use social media every day?
Myself personally,
Good
uh,
question. For work.
yeah, for work. So we post every day up for our shows. Every one of our shows has everything. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, now X. I think a couple of our shows even have LinkedIn. So we're posting every single day. We pre-schedule those. So that way we're not rushing. We also try to respond if there's something in the news that impacts or is about something that we cover. We try to surface things about that. We try to do, what's called writing a hashtag. So if there's a hashtag trending, we absolutely will jump on that, especially if it's related to a celebrity that we've had on the show. If it's a topic like, Black History Month, we had a lot of
Mm,
content about Black history. So we'll
yeah.
try to use those kinds of national trends to our advantage.
Mm. So roughly 2 hours, 1 hour.
I don't know. I would have to ask our social media person, but every
Yeah.
day we're on social media all over the
Mhm.
place.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the based on the industry you play, I think that sort of makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, I'm good with that. Okay. Last question. What is your favorite marketing quote?
Oh, I know. I actually know what it is. And I'm sorry, I'm going to contradict what you've been saying. My favorite marketing quote is culture eats strategy every day.
Mm, 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 mm. Culture eats strategy every day.
Yeah.
Mm, mm, mm. That's interesting. So, what does that mean?
It means that you can make all the plans that you want, right? You can lay out your projection, you can lay out all the 50 steps you're going to take. But if you don't engender a culture and community, a sense of belonging around what you are trying to market, it's gonna fall flat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. It's all about culture. It's all about execution. You're right. You're right. So the last question. Um, in terms of your audio shows, have you? I know companies come to you. They have a purpose, which is good. There's a purpose on to which they want to drive this initiative. Um, and this purpose sometimes is not necessarily connected to that audio journalism initiative, although it influences it in some way. Have you seen or have you worked with clients that do that? I want to do this show in order to drive, say, brand recall, overall brand recall. We're discussing, before the call around, brand surveys and things like that. So, do you want to tell us a bit of maybe one or two examples of companies that try to do that? And is that important? Like, how important is not just running audio journalism, not just running a show, but running a show for a specific business purpose,
Yeah.
not marketing purpose, business purpose?
So great question. And there's a big difference in driving sales through a podcast. And we have a really great example in one of our original shows, which is called How to Talk to High Achievers About Anything. It's hosted by Savannah Lewis, who is a licensed therapist and also an executive coach. And it's geared to the high achieving, upwardly mobile, professional Black and Brown hyphenated American. And what happens is that he gives out all of these, strong words of advice, a lot of practical knowledge about how to navigate corporate America. And then people hire him because they hear him on the show. They hire him to be their executive coach. They hire him to go present. They hire him to go and do trainings. And so that's a very direct sales funnel. And a lot of businesses, especially indie businesses, use that model where you basically give away um, some practical advice, and in return, you can direct new clients to yourself. So that's one. But for example, we have been doing a podcast for Aspen Institute about college students who are also parents. And very surprisingly, 25% of American college students are actually parents. And so it's a very little known fact. And Aspen, because they work with that population, really wanted to increase awareness of the work that they do and also highlight the successes of this population. So the show is called One in Five, and it is essentially each of the episodes is a profile of a student who also happens to be a parent and how
Wow.
they navigate those two worlds and how they succeed and the support that they have. And so that's a really successful example of how Aspen Institute expanded their brand awareness while also using journalism to highlight, the successes of a very, very niche population in the US.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. Data, I think as a takeaway from that, your response is key. Customer research is key. You know, find as much insights as you can, and you might just pick those little known facts, which might be the basis for your audio show or podcast show. I'm always tempted to go towards podcasts, but there are different types of audios these days. So um, but yeah, data is should be at the back of all of that as well. Thank you so much. It's been a great one. Great wisdom again. All answers are the examples. Awesome. That was great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Where can people
For
follow
having me.
you? Yeah, sure. Where can people follow you and learn more from you about this topic? Audio journalism.
So I am on all the social media platforms, but the best place to find our work is at lwcstudios.com.
All right. Guys, there you have it. You can find more episodes like this one on my website, .lovesmarketing.com. If you also want to subscribe to Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, sure. Marketing leadership is the word to search for. I'd like to thank Content Allies, Listen Network, and Desk Creek for all their support. We've been recording like crazy. Till next time, guys, connect the dots.
Thank you for listening to the Marketing Leadership Podcast, brought to you by Dots Loves Marketing. There will be links to any resources mentioned in today's show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.